are the artists on your playlist?
Because I'm from Georgia, I have to say, y'all got married in Ringo, Georgia?
We got married in Ringo.
You're pretty good. You're trying to get into my secrets.
Atlanta News First presents Monica Pearson, One-on-One.
Good evening. My guests tonight have one thing in common. They are risk takers. One gave up a lucrative career to become a juvenile court judge and later a judge on TV. Singing sisters competed in a national TV show, and a young man ran away to join the circus. Terrence Robinson is with Cirque du Soleil. The BoykinZ showed America they got talent. And Judge Glenda Hatchett celebrates 25 years as a judge on TV. When Judge Hatchett and I went one-on-one, she told me she is often asked if Hatchett is her TV name because of the way she presides from the bench. It is her real name, her family name from Paul and Clemmy Hatchett, the couple who gave her life, personality, and much more.
Don't lie because you're under oath.
Yeah.
We are the bad guys.
You are the bad guy.
Why? Enough.
Judge Glenda Hatchett channels both of her parents when she's on the bench, especially her mother.
This when the 10-year-olds wear Spanx.
Right.
Don't get me preaching up in here today.
It is very much her. Yeah, very, very much.
Very direct.
Very direct. No nonsense. Very, very direct. And that is very much my mother's personality. Now, the other side of being on the bench, of giving people grace, is my father. It really is, because as you know, I would really try to keep these kids out of jail. I'd say, listen, I'm giving you another chance. But then I'd say, but if you come back in here, there's going to be hell to pay. Now, that's Clemmy. That's my mother. But the whole thing of really trying to get them out of the situations they were in and trying to get them in better situations was very much my dad's approach to life, and him trying to make sure that people were good and better, even though mom was very generous. I mean, she was. But dad's whole thing of just making people feel like there's hope and that there's a better way was very much my dad.
Paul was from LaGrange, Georgia, Clemmy from Florence, South Carolina, and they met in graduate school in Atlanta. They moved to Atlanta after they married. Judge Hatchett is the first of 3 children and the only girl. She went to segregated schools until she received a scholarship from Mount Holyoke College in Massachusetts.
It was crazy because people think it's very strange. I never had a white teacher before I went to college, nor did I have a white classmate. When I tell you I went to a very segregated Atlanta public school, that's where I went. But I was a part of that integration generation where they were recruiting Black students to go to Ivy League schools. And so it was a huge transition because I thought I was smart. But everybody was smart. Everybody was smart. And people were extremely wealthy in that situation. My roommate had a trust fund. When she turned 21, she would automatically get $20 million. Now, that's a lot of money, even now, but that was a lot of money back then when I was in college. And so it was a cultural thing of really understanding and adopting and adjusting to different cultures and different backgrounds, but it served me well.
And how?
It really did, because it opened up my world, right? Monica, there is no place ever that I go anywhere in this country and speak and people don't acknowledge that that's where I went to college. And so in retrospect, it did serve me well. At the time, I'm thinking, why the hell am I here? But I also believed that they benefited from me being there.
And how?
Because I brought a certain new dimension to that situation. And I have always said, listen, wait a minute now. You didn't just do me a favor by having more diversity in this campus. I brought my gifts. I brought my knowledge. I brought my perspective. I brought my talent in these conversations, in these classrooms, that you got better because of that. So don't be telling me that this whole thing, that you did me a favor by opening this door and you're here only because you are an affirmative action admission. No, I'm here because I'm good, but I'm also here because I bring a different dimension. And I think that that's some of the conversation that we're missing today. I really do. And I'm unapologetic about that. Unapologetic about it.
So when you decided to go to law school, why?
The truth is, you know how some kids know that they want to be a lawyer when they're 5 or 10 or whatever? When I was in school, I really thought, particularly in high school, I really wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. And so I went to law school, honest to goodness, Monica, to expand my options. I never, ever in my life expected to practice law. I wasn't interested in being a lawyer. I know that sounds very strange. I went to law school and I got bit by the litigation bug. And I'm on the elevator in the law school, right? And this professor looks at me and says, all of the women in my family went to Mount Holyoke. And I'm thinking, do I care? And he says, so, Miss Hatchett, how did you get in?
What?
So I simply said, I applied. Then the elevator doors finally open and I get off the elevator. But it wasn't over. So the next day in class, you know, the first year class, you know, there are probably 90 students in these big sections. And he calls on me. And he calls me on the second question, third question, fourth question. Then he tells the class, put your hands down. And he grilled me for 50 minutes. Thank God I was prepared, right? And then at the bell rings, he slams his book down and storms out. And some of the folk in the class just start clapping. But that was to get back at me. What was I supposed to say? I said I applied. But his whole thing is, if all of these women in my family, who I deem to be distinguished and talented, then how did you get in?
History in the making. Up next, Judge Hatchett talks about the historic moment here in Georgia where she literally had a front row seat. Plus, how she herself made Georgia history.
Monica Pearson One-on-One is sponsored by Montlick Injury Attorneys.
In 1979, President Jimmy Carter made history when he appointed Horace Ward as a federal judge, the first black federal judge in the Deep South. Glenda Hatchett was his clerk.
It was a big deal, and you couldn't get into the courtroom. It was in the big ceremonial courtroom of the old courthouse downtown. So imagine now that everybody's around the walls. I mean, people are out in the foyer. There were even people out on the sidewalk who couldn't get into the building. It's packed. He did like this. And I rushed over. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There was one seat, Monica, in the jury box. The first seat on the front row somehow was empty. And he said, Glenda, go sit down. And I said, oh, no, sir, no, sir, no, sir. No, sir. I was just so grateful to be there. He said, Glenda, I said, go take a seat. And when I sat in that seat that day, I had a front row, literally and figuratively, to history. Because when he raised his right hand and he put his other hand on the Bible to take the oath of office, he took it in the same courtroom where Judge Moore, decades before, had denied him admission to the University of Georgia Law School. Now tell me the ark doesn't bend in the righteous woman. I mean, that's some shouting news. But the best story, and I promise to make this short, but this is so important to who I am and where I've ended up, is that I'm getting emotional about it. I got to clerk out of law school for the very first black federal judge anywhere in the Deep South. I'm clear. I am where I am, Monica, because I stand on the shoulders of mighty generations. I do not get that twisted. I don't.
So you practiced law and you went to work for Delta. Why did you make that transition?
At that time, I was very pregnant when I was interviewing at Delta, and then went to work for Delta Airlines. And at the time was the highest ranking woman, not just black woman, I was the highest ranking woman of any color worldwide. And they never had a black woman attorney. And people think, well, it's an easier route. No, it's working some long, hard hours because unlike a lot of companies, we actually tried the cases. We didn't just manage them. We actually tried cases. I tried cases all over the country.
Worldwide.
Yes.
But being the first woman to be in a position like that, in a company like that, what were the stresses and how did you handle them?
Well, the stresses were overt sometimes. And then sometimes they were just kind of underhanded to try to undermine you. I mean, I had people go in and put stuff in the typing pool where my briefs were supposed to be done, and all of a sudden they weren't there anymore. I mean, there were some things that were really ugly. So there had been other women, but there had never been a black woman there, which was the double edge that they just couldn't quite figure it out. So I wouldn't do it now, Monica. I wouldn't. I tell young lawyers this all the time, but this is what I did to survive. I would type into my pleadings or sign G. Hatchett Johnson, so that when people got letters from me or things were filed in court, they assumed I was a man. And they surely didn't think I was a black woman. So quick story, I have a big antitrust case that I'm responsible for. I was maybe 30, and I probably looked a lot younger at the time, and I go in New York, law firm, Manhattan, and I'm sitting there in the conference room and the opposing counsel comes in and he looks at me. I'm taking the deposition. He looks at me and he says, "We'll get started when your boss gets here." Now this is when Paul came out. This is when my daddy came out. So I sat there for a second and I thought, okay, now I can go shenanigan on him real quick. And I could have cussed him out real quick. But instead I calmly said, "I am the lead attorney on this case." At which point he laughed in my face, pulled out a magazine out of his briefcase, reared back, and started flipping his magazine. So I did some softball. So I had to make a decision. Either I was going to go off on him or I was going to figure out how I was going to win. So I did softball questions. I'll make this very abbreviated. And then I proceeded to tack his clients to the wall. And by the time he figured out what was happening,
It's too late.
So, but I tell people you have to choose. You have to choose your battles. I'm not suggesting that you take junk off of people. That's not what I'm saying. But you gotta decide how and when you're gonna fight these battles. And it was more important for me to use the energy to figure out how to win than it was for me to, cuss him out. Because I was perfectly capable of doing that. But it was far more important to me that I win.
I was surprised when you left Delta.
I was too.
But who made you leave, if you know what I mean?
Okay, so as you will recall, Judge Powell had been the judge on the juvenile court for some 23 years. And she called me. And one Saturday morning, which is unusual because usually but the kids were out doing stuff and we talked for over an hour. And she said, "Glenda, what would it take to get you to leave?" I said, "Oh, no, Judge." I didn't realize she knew she was sick, but I know she was not going to make it, right? And she said, "What would it take to get you to leave?" And I said, "Oh, no, Judge, I would never leave. My goal was to retire. I wanted to be a senior vice president. I had it all figured out, right? I was there, right? That's what I was going to do." So fast forward, she did pass away. I get a call from a mentor, someone I had great respect. He said, "I want to talk to you about this." And my dad joined us at my house. 3 of us were in my living room. And I said, "Thank you very much, but I wouldn't leave my job, Monica. Look, girl, listen, I had these 2 young boys. Come on. I could fly wherever I wanted to fly. I was making money. Plus, I never lost a case. Come on. I was not leaving. And this is what, my dad well, and you know how this must have sounded. He did not tell me what to do. The 2 of us were sitting there, And he looked at me and he said, Glenda, all I ask is that you pray about it before you decide. This is my inside voice. This is my inner voice. I didn't say this out loud. I'm thinking, pray about what?
She prayed, turned in her application right before the deadline, and was one of 63 people applying for the position. She got it and never regretted the decision.
Even though my ego was involved and I hadn't lost the case and I thought I was hot stuff at Delta Airlines and this, that, and the other, I wasn't making a difference. And I found my purpose and my passion in that courtroom with those children. And now years later, I get these stories back about, Judge, I came through your court and let me tell you where I am now. And so I know that that is where I was supposed to be. It wasn't me, but I'm grateful that I ended up there. I was making a fraction of what I was making. I didn't have the benefits. I didn't have all of that. But there was a certain kind of satisfaction in that work that I'm just very grateful for. I believe that that is what I was supposed to do, and that's what I was called to do. And I do believe that my work, and I've written about this, was like prenatal care, Monica. That if I could get my hands on a 15-year-old, that hopefully we wouldn't see them in the system at 25, 35, 45. And that I thought if I could really make a difference with these children that were before me, that I was making a hell of a head start on their children's children. And I still believe that was so important to me.
When we return, how Judge Hatchett had to change her courtroom demeanor when she took the bench on TV. Plus, she opens up about a family tragedy that has become a crusade for maternal care. And later, how singing sisters from Georgia captured the prized golden buzzer on America's Got Talent.
It sounds like we're off to a great start.
I was not the first one to throw a walk.
Wait. Now, let me just tell you what you just said.
It's always about Jordan begging for money.
Hey! When I'm talking, nobody else talks.
It's hard to believe Judge Glenda Hatchett has been on TV for 25 years, and she believes she's been successful because she's the same person on TV that she was in juvenile court most of the time.
I think that's why it's worked. Well, not think. I know that's why it's worked because I'm not acting. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I translated from what I did. So when you see me come down off the bench on television, you know that that's what I did in my courtroom. I would come down off the bench. And it's very interesting. A young woman said to me, who ended up going to Georgia Tech, I'm very proud of, that's a whole other story, maybe for another interview. And she said, you know what you said to me? You said if I came back in your courtroom one more time, you were gonna come down here and wring my neck. Well, I don't remember having said that, but I probably did. So what you saw and what you see on television is just what I've always done. And my goal was that even if I ruled against you in my courtroom and television, my goal is for you to leave in better shape than you came in there. And I'm hoping that there are some life lessons in that process. Have we had to edit some stuff on television? Yes. My bailiff, Tom, on my original show, literally had to hold me one day because I was going to go. I was on my way to just really get this little girl. Because I said, if you were my daughter, you wouldn't be acting like this. She said, I ain't your daughter. So I'm like, okay. So you know me, I get it. So they had to cut all that out because I was like all in that child's face, But I take it very seriously.
While many people would define her shows over the years as entertainment, for some people that was not the case. Watching the show was life-changing, as Judge Hatchett found out at a book signing in New York.
This woman raises her hand in the Q&A, and she said, Judge, I'm graduating with my nursing degree in May. And I'm like, oh, that's wonderful. She said, no, you don't understand how wonderful it is. She said, I was strung out on drugs.
I lost custody of all of my children. I was on the sofa and I was watching you on television. And you told that woman who was on crack in your courtroom that you were pulling for her and that what you expected. She said, I believe that you were talking to me. She said, I got up off that sofa and checked myself into rehab that day. Honey, grown men in the thing are crying, I'm crying, she's crying, everybody's crying. And I have a lot of stories like that. So I see this powerful medium of television as being able to touch people who I'll never know who they are. One other quick story. Woman at another book signing in Detroit. I look up and I'm like, oh my God, we shouldn't have had you stand in line. She's an elderly lady. So we should have pulled you up to the front line. She said, Judge, I would have stood in line all night, honey. I got something to tell you. And she said, I'm in law school. She was 83 years old, Monica, because she was a 2-time cancer survivor. So I'm thinking, nah, she just kind of making this up. Kind of like, I wasn't quite sure. Her daughter, who was in her 50s, said, Judge, we're in law school together. She said, I watched you every day on television and you kept saying, there's a dream with your name on it. It's a dream with you. Kept telling these people, there's a dream with your name on it. And she said, my dream was to be a lawyer. She was a second-year law student.
At 83.
At 83 years old, right? And so you just never know how these messages, and I have so many, not an 83-year-old story like that, but I have so many stories where people will stop me in the airport or stop me in the grocery store or send me messages about how their lives have changed. And so, no, I needed to have left Delta. I didn't understand that at the time, that this would be, so important to me in my life journey, but I'm grateful for it, Monica. I'm just grateful.
When One-on-One continues how the death of her daughter-in-law during childbirth has led to a lifelong mission by her son to make sure no family has to go through what they did. Plus, Judge Hatchett opens up about becoming a sexual battery victim and her decision to appeal a ruling that says she now has to pay legal fees after withdrawing a lawsuit against the Sheriff's Association. Judge Hatchett has 2 sons from her former marriage. Her older son, Charles Spurgeon Johnson IV, married Kira and had their first child, Charles Spurgeon Johnson V. They moved to California, where Kira was from, and prepared for the birth of their second son. Kira died after giving birth to Langston in 2016.
Kira died.
Kira died.
After giving birth.
Right.
And it was a death everyone said could have been prevented.
It was preventable. Kira was healthy.
39 years old.
39 years old, vibrant. She spoke 5 languages fluently. Before she fell in love with Charles, she was actually living in China. She had 12 schools that she had developed to teach English. I mean, she was just amazing, absolutely amazing. Beautiful inside and out. They had moved out to LA and I was out there, and Charles IV was only 19 months old, and we never expected not to walk out with her. And they let her hemorrhage to death. She had a scheduled C-section. It wasn't an emergency, it was a scheduled C-section. The cut time typically for a second C-section is anywhere from 12 to 15 minutes. Guess how long the cut time was for Kira? Less than 4 minutes. Basically butchered her. And they didn't go back in. They could have saved her life. They knew there was some problems starting about 6 o'clock. He said, I may have nicked your bladder, I'll just go back in and fix it. Didn't go back into the OR until midnight, did not make the incision until 12:20. There were several liters of blood in her abdomen and she coded. They brought her back temporarily, and the second time she coded, she was gone. She is one of too many women who lose their lives. I think I'm pretty well versed and keep up with stuff. I did not understand what a horrible problem this is in this country.
Particularly for Black women.
Particularly for Black women, and I'm concerned about all women, but Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely, And with all these new things that are happening now with insurance and Medicaid, we expect that number will get even worse. But when you go in a situation and you're 3 to 4 times more likely, but this is what's going to really shock you, is that 80% of these deaths are preventable. 80% of these maternal deaths are preventable. So when I first got that information, I'm like, that can't be true. I've got to research this. That is true. And so there are times when there are women who have pre-existing conditions. I get that. But when 80% of these women are dying, they shouldn't be dying, Kira being one of them. So now, bring them back to Atlanta. So we have a 19-month-old, a brand new baby, a grieving son, and Charles V comes into I hear him wake up one night, and I get up to check on him. His room is right next to mine. And I always left the door open so I could hear him. And this is what he said to me. He said, Grandma G, and I know this for a fact, he was not yet 3, very articulate. He said, Grandma G, do you have my mommy's cell phone? And I said, no, sweetie, I don't. He said, I need you to find it. I need you to call God and tell God I want my mommy to come home. What do you say? 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 And so that's been the mission. That's been the mission of how can we raise the awareness? Because people weren't talking about Black women dying until Kira died. I mean, let's just be real, right? And someone said, well, Judge, if they'd known it was your daughter-in-law, I said, no. It shouldn't have been anybody's child dying. Nobody's wife should be dying, nobody's mother. And so the whole point is we're trying to send more mothers home with their children. And I want people to be very hypersensitive about this, that you've got to have someone there. Charles has been doing a lot of work for Cure for Moms and now for Cure for Dads in coaching partners of what to do, what to ask for. But he did everything right, and she still died because they ignored it.
Charles Johnson filed a medical malpractice and a civil suit against the medical center where his wife died. The medical malpractice lawsuit and civil suit against the medical center were resolved with no admission of wrongdoing in the medical malpractice lawsuit. Charles Johnson also started 2 nonprofit organizations, For Kira for Moms and For Kira for Dads, to educate and advocate to lower the maternal death rate in the United States. On another front, instead of presiding in court, Judge Hatchett is in court, battling with the Georgia Sheriff's Association. It all began several years ago in Cobb County, where a now former sheriff from another county pleaded guilty to a charge of sexual battery against Judge Hatchett. After that, she withdrew her case against the offender and the Sheriff's Association. How much can't we talk about?
We can talk about the fact that I have been ordered to pay attorney's fees for the Georgia Sheriff's Association. After I dropped the case, the sheriff who
he grabbed you by the breast.
Right, by the breast, sexually assaulted me, pled guilty, did not serve any jail time, and was only on probation for a year.
Lost his job.
He did have to resign. He did lose his job. And then the case got moved to Morgan County. Well, I didn't even know where Morgan County was. I had to go look it up. North Georgia. And I had to make the decision, Monica, that I did not want to spend the next 3, 4, 5 years litigating a case in Morgan County. So I dropped the civil case against them. I did. I dropped the civil case. And then they waited and decided, well, they're just going to sue me for having sued them.
For their legal fees.
So,
bad message.
It's the chilling effect for other people. Now, I've got a great team of lawyers. I've got people who you call, people check on me. And so I have a lot of support. But what about that woman who doesn't have the kind of support, who doesn't have the legal background that I have, and thinks, well, God, if this is happening to Judge, what would happen if I said something, right? But it also is not lost on me that the filing against me to get their legal fees back was filed on the day that the president was inaugurated.
So I'm up in Morgan County. It looks like a throwback to Kill a Mockingbird. Without exaggeration, there is still the balcony where the quote-unquote colored people used to sit. And there's just one courtroom in the whole county and one Superior Court judge. It's a very old courthouse, and it's just a throwback. And you have to drive, and then you have to get off the expressway and drive a lot more. And I didn't want to be there, which is why I dropped the lawsuit. I didn't want to spend that kind of energy for the next 3 or 4 years. And then they come after me for their attorney's fees. But they messed with the wrong one.
Her attorneys have filed a motion for reconsideration. She has the support of 11 sheriffs who stated in a letter to the association, quote, "This course of action sends a chilling message to survivors of sexual violence in Georgia and beyond." Judge Hatchett says if she loses the reconsideration and the judgment stands, she will appeal. But that's not the only thing in her future. Her children's book will be released in the spring.
The premise is, so when someone tells you you can't, you tell them you can. When somebody tells you you can't because you're a little girl, you tell them you can be anything you want to be. And that's Paul Hatchett. You know that's my dad all day long. I mean, I did not grow up thinking that being a little colored girl was a curse. I never saw myself as being less than. And that's Paul Hatchett.
The Verdict with Judge Hatchett can be seen daily on Peachtree TV. Up next, I go one-on-one with the country music sister act, the BoykinZ, who hit big on America's Got Talent and now are taking their act overseas. Plus, meet the young man who is literally jumping through the hoops at his job with Cirque du Soleil. When it comes to country music and sister acts, Georgia has contributed a few. The latest addition to the country music sister act is from Gwinnett County, the BoykinZ from Snellville. When I went one-on-one with them, I learned they first made their mark on TikTok before being on America's Got Talent. On TikTok, the sisters have 603,000 followers and have racked up 13.4 million likes for their posts. Meet Kylan, 24, Anali, 22, Naiteri, 21, and Alana, 18. Better known as the
BoykinZ. THEBOYKINZ.
Okay, so how did we decide to do the Z?
Boykin is our last name, and Z is for Generation Z because we're all born in that generation.
So let's talk about how you all have become this unbelievable group, not just from America's Got Talent, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but you really made your mark on TikTok, dancing. So how did that get started?
Around the pandemic, we were very hesitant to even join TikTok. We were like, you know, we got to be serious artists. Do they do this? Hop on social media and just have fun. And we're like, we're kids, we gotta enjoy our lives and express ourselves. And we're like, if the world is ending, why not go out with the bang? And so we dug in our closets and I styled the girls. Kylan choreographed everything you see on TikTok, and we just did what we felt and we expressed ourselves. We felt free and liberated to do just that, and it took off.
80 million views.
Yeah, it's insane to think about.
It's insane to think about. Just very, very grateful, if anything.
So is that how Kelly Clarkson found you?
Yes, I believe through TikTok, yeah.
Yeah, that was a surprise. She said she liked our covers and our videos, and it brought joy to her. And we're like, what, Kelly Clarkson? And then she surprised us with Shania Twain the same day, and it didn't feel real. Yeah. This doesn't feel real. None of this feels real. It's like, what? When we decided to just have fun and, I don't know, just really express ourselves, where it led to, you know, it's like, thank you, God.
What's the best advice that Kelly Clarkson gave you? Because you remember she came up through a show where you had to compete. So what was the advice?
Her advice to us was never to let anyone dim our light and be uniquely who you are and stay who you are. I think that's one of the biggest things that anyone has ever said to us. It felt very close to home. Hearing her saying that was like a second mom. But she just kind of notified us about being you and staying you and being unapologetic for that, because look how far she's come and people love who she is, and so we should be able to love who we are too.
On Kelly's show, they performed with Shania Twain and then performed on Twain's Queen of Me tour stop in Nashville.
And then at the end, we did a
finale with
Winona Judd,
Breland,
Tucker, Breland,
Kelsey Ballerini. It was really cool.
Crazy. Man, I feel like a woman, favorite song ever. So I'm glad we got to do that with her.
So, how did you not fangirl?
Oh.
Or did you?
I did. I just let all the emotions out. I was just like, it's now or never. So, give her it all.
But she's so real. It's like you forget about, well, not forget, but it's like she makes you feel very comfortable. And it was just easy to be ourselves around her. And I'm so blessed that she loves us just as much.
How would you describe what you do?
We call our sound urban country. It's mixed with some Western, hip hop, soul,
rap,
pop. It's a lot of things. You know, it's hard to just narrow down and say one thing, but country is our roots.
But I think our lives, like we grew up around our grandma and she's from South Carolina. Most of our family's from South Carolina. But they're dynamic the way they talk down there, very Southern. But yeah, we grew up around her and so, you know, kind of like a trailer. But yeah, it was the South Side. So you got your grits, you got your fried chicken, you got your cornbread. It's the culture.
The BoykinZ appeared on the 20th season of America's Got Talent. They auditioned with one song, but then did another. Simon Cowell let it be known he preferred the first performance.
When you performed what I call your theme song, I Fell in Love with Cowboy, everybody was up, including the judges, dancing along with you. But it took Terry Crews to give you the golden buzzer.
Oh, we love Terry.
Oh, God bless him. Thank you. Oh, that moment. I mean, we still have our little box of the golden chips, and we reminisce a lot, but thank you, Terry Crews, if you're watching this so much. That meant the world to us to even, like, we grew up watching this show, so to actually be in it and then get a golden buzzers, I mean, what else can we say, you know?
They did not make the finals and were so happy to have their family, especially their grandmother, on stage with them after their elimination.
I have to ask you, best advice that you were given by your grandmother as you are on this road?
Stick together.
Yeah.
She always says that. She's just like, don't let nobody break you up. You are so stronger as a unit. Do not let nobody break that.
The BoykinZ will stick together on their tour dates for 2026. Stops include Nashville, Houston, and Zurich, Switzerland. Up next, we'll take you behind the scenes of Cirque du Soleil and get an inside look at how the performers prepare for those daring moves in the show. Now it's time to go to the circus. Cirque du Soleil is here with its show, Lucia. The tagline is immerse yourself in a dream. Terrence Robinson has done just that as an acrobat with Cirque. It is his dream job, as I learned when I went one-on-one with him on the circus grounds at Atlantic Station. Terrence Robinson is a hummingbird in Lucia, a story about a traveler in a dreamlike Mexico. Terrence is an acrobat.
So you go through this one or this one?
We go through this one. What we do, we have the 2 treadmills, and this is in the middle of the 2 treadmills.
And the treadmill is moving?
The treadmill is moving. So we use one treadmill to jump as it's moving, to go through this one and do a flip through this one and land on the second moving treadmill afterwards. So, yeah, and this is what we do. We do everything with the costume, with the wings, with the beak, with everything.
The timing has to be precise.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. The stage also turns at the same time.
Oh my gosh. So if you have vertigo, you're in trouble.
Yes, you are. You have to get over it.
So how do you keep your balance and keep your focus so that your timing is right?
Yeah, so we have things that we spot. So when the stage is turning, we spot either here or we spot at the edge of the treadmill. to make sure that we're not looking too much. And sometimes if we're not doing any acrobatics, we look at the public, we smile and play with them and everything. But after a while, you just get used to it.
You focus.
You focus, yeah.
Terrence has performed in Louisiana since 2019, but started long ago dreaming of being an acrobat.
So when I was in high school, actually, I did a lot of sports growing up, but my passion was always acrobatics. And I was always flipping, and my dad sometimes would get upset at me because I would be in like football practice and doing flips whenever I had the time. He would be like, no, focus, you're in training right now. And so in high school, I wasn't doing any sports because I broke my wrist, then I broke my pinky. And the day after I got my pinky out of the cast, I was tumbling in front of my school, and a lady who owned a youth circus in St. Louis called Circus Harmony, she just so happened to see me and my friends tumbling, so she stopped and gave her card to the security guard. And when I looked at the card, it was one of the friends who I used to tumble with on the street all the time on the card. And I remembered that he used to always say, come and join the circus, like do flips, because you will learn how to do better technique. And I was like, I don't want to be a clown. I don't want to wear big feet, big shoes. But because I wasn't doing anything, I decided, why not? And I took the class and I fell in love with it ever since then. And I just ran away with it.
So Cirque du Soleil is the creme de la creme of all the circuses. So how did you get to Cirque du Soleil?
So I actually went to a circus school in Canada, and I did 4 years there to own my technique and everything. Afterwards, I traveled around and did a lot of circuses after I graduated. I had 2 best friends on the show before, and when a spot opened up and I was free at the time, they asked me if I wanted to join to come in, do auditions, and I thought, why not? I can come and figure it out. So I sent in my resume to the artistic directors and everything. They told me to come. I came and talked to everyone. I did a small audition for them, and after that, they told me that I was hired.
So what do you have to maintain? Do you have to maintain your weight?
You have to maintain mostly your physical ability. So we, on top of training with the tricks in the circus itself, we also make sure that we're stretching. We have recovery workouts that we do. We have a very, very good physical therapist here. We also have our own specific training that we do as far as weightlifting and things like that. So that is what we have to make sure we are able to maintain to be able to perform 10 shows a week if we need to.
You're a real athlete then.
Yes.
I mean, we think of you as an actor or performer, but you're an acrobat. You are an athlete. What's the hardest part of the job?
For me personally, the hardest part of the job is the food.
You love to eat, you're a foodie.
I like to splurge, and I sometimes overeat, and that's the hardest part for me, honestly. But other than that, the discipline of staying in shape and working out, once you get into a rhythm, it's pretty easy for me, actually.
So what have you given up to be in the circus?
I've given up time with family a lot because I left when I was 18, and ever since then, I'm 32 now, and I got home once a year, if that, because we're traveling all the time and we're working, and so spending time with them is something that I definitely had to give up.
But what's the plus in what you're doing?
I get to travel the world. I get to be happy. I get to get paid to travel the world, to see and experience new cultures, new places, meet new people, and do what I love, to be on stage and just make people happy. Seeing them smile with the craft that I've owned over years, and just know that, okay, all of my work that I've done, all the sacrifices that I've made isn't in vain, you know?
What's it like performing in front of your home audience?
It's fun. It's really fun. It's exciting, especially knowing that I'm gonna have my family come and see them. I haven't actually performed for them in 13, 14 years, besides my mom. But the rest of my family, I haven't performed for them in around 13, 14 years. So it's exciting to know that they're gonna be able to come and see me on stage.
But his parents are symbolically always with him through tattoos.
It's a B with a heartbeat through it. So my mother's last name is Bell, And I always say that she's my heart because she is the one who made me be able to follow my dreams, and she never held me back from it. She always pushed me forward. And then this one is for my dad. It's a room that resembles, and it's also mixed with the R. My dad's last name is Robinson. And my dad is always my vision of strength and protection. He would always tell me, if you're gonna do something, do it 100%. So they are, of course, very special people to me.
Cirque du Soleil is at Atlantic Station through January 25th. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you'll join me every Sunday at 8 right here on Atlanta News First. And don't forget to subscribe to Atlanta News First on YouTube to watch all episodes of Monica Pearson One-on-One. Good night.